I finally got it. 18 years of waiting, 3 years of high school, one morning where I couldn't eat breakfast because my hands wouldn't hold a spoon, and then a woman in a gray uniform walked down the row and dropped a card on my desk face down like she was dealing me into a game. I turned it over. Recommended class, Summoner. 1 recommendation, not 2, not 3. Everybody else in that room got 3 and spent the next hour agonizing over which one. I got 1, and it was the class that every professional on the planet uses as a punchline. Up at the front, our homeroom teacher was already doing the speech. Every school does this speech. Lights off, projector on, and she said the thing they all say, which is that Awakening Day is the only fair day of your life, and after today, nothing will ever be fair again. Then she got practical. Choose warrior, she said. If you can't be a warrior, choose a support class. If you can't do either and your family has money, buy your way into something. Our pass rate last year was 50%. That means half of you in this room will be working normal jobs in 6 months. Half. She said it like she was reading the weather. My deskmate Chen Wei leaned over. Chen Wei was the kind of guy who had a plan for everything and a backup plan that was worse than the plan. Monk, he whispered. I'm going monk. Nobody goes monk. Low competition. Nobody goes monk because it's a bad class. Low competition, he said again, like repeating it would make it a strategy. And then I looked at my own card, at my talent numbers, and I said the sentence that ruined my life. Strength 3.7, Intelligence 4.7, Constitution 4.0, Spirit 3.8, Agility 1.9, which is a number so bad I want you to know. I have never been good at running. And under it, recommended class Summoner. I laughed, out loud, in a silent room, on the most important morning of my life. I said, only someone with a problem in their head would choose Summoner. The words were still in the air when something spoke inside my skull, detecting the host's deep prejudice against the Summoner class. I sat up so fast my chair screamed against the floor, activating Divine Rank Summoner talent, Hex Tech Augment Rune. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, and it is a mean one, if the host does not choose Summoner, the system will self-destruct in anger. So the good news was that I had a system, an actual honest-to-God cheat, the kind of thing you read about in the trash novels I used to burn my nights on back when I had a different life and a different name. The bad news was that I had just insulted it to its face, and it was petty. Lin Bo, my homeroom teacher, was looking at me. Something funny? No, ma'am. My voice came out perfectly level, which was a small miracle. I was just deciding my future. Here's the thing about the Hextech runes, and I want you to understand this part, because everything I did for the next year came out of these 2 sentences. Every 5 levels, I get 2 of them. Not 1 skill, not 1 stat point. 2 permanent, stacking, universe-warping modifications to the rules of engagement. They come in silver, gold, and prismatic is the kind of thing that makes a strategist put down his tea and stare at a wall. And more than that, group bonds, emblems. If I collect enough of a set, every summon I own gets the buff at once. 30 bonds is 30 talents running in parallel on an army. The strongest professional in our world is a man named Shu Tianming, triple S talent, level 71. They call him the war god of Kyushu, and he has been stuck for years trying to open the level 70 abyss by himself, because there is nobody standing next to him who can survive the doorway. He has 1 talent. I was about to have 30. I looked at the card in my hand, and I stopped seeing Summoner as a sentence. I started seeing it as an opening. Platform 4 at the sanctuary was a white room that smelled like a hospital, and the staff member behind the console had the face of a man who had processed 600 kids that week and was contractually forbidden from having opinions about any of them. The kid ahead of me was a classmate named Gao Xuan, who had drawn something forgettable and was busy transferring into Warrior, which cost his family more than our house. He walked past me with the look of a guy who had just spent everything and knew it. Then my card went into the reader, and the staff member's contractual neutrality cracked right down the middle. That can't be right. He tapped the screen. He tapped it again. He turned it toward his colleague, who leaned in, looked, and made a small noise. Only 1 recommendation, I said. Only 1. He rubbed his forehead. Kid, listen. The sanctuary is not always right. It reads your attributes. It doesn't read your life. If you want, we can process you for a transfer. Warrior's expensive, but Shield Warrior is cheaper, and there's a payment plan. Summoner. He stopped. What? I'll take the Summoner. There was a pause where he looked at me the way you look at a man walking into traffic, and then he shrugged in a way that said he had a quota and I was not his son, and he pressed the button. The light came down, and in the middle of that light, the first 2 runes rolled. Congratulations. First rune, Prismatic Grade, Demon Contract, Prismatic on the first draw. I want you to appreciate that. That is the rarest tier in the game, and I got it before I had a single summon to my name. Then I read what it did, and my stomach did something complicated. Demon contract. The host may burn maximum health to obtain talent points for summoned beasts. Health burned this way does not recover, ever, so the deal was simple. I could make my monsters unstoppable by making myself a stiff breeze away from a coffin. Second rune, silver grade, Butler's Heart, which gave me a butler emblem, which activated a butler bond, which I did not understand yet, and which would eventually turn a $2 goblin into something that made a level 59 warrior wet himself. But that comes later. I stepped off the platform, and my homeroom teacher was waiting at the bottom of the stairs with her arms folded and her whole face already disappointed. Summoner, she said. Summoner. Linbo. Do you know that the summoner class does not have a guild, not a small guild, not a bad guild, 0 in the entire country? Do you know there are no state subsidies allocated to summoners because nobody bothered writing the line item? She was building momentum now, and other students were slowing down to watch. How exactly do you intend to level? Are you going to do it relying on the level 1 goblin? She said goblin the way you'd say head lice, so I turned my attribute panel around and let her read it herself. Talent. Demon contract. Rank S. Her voice went up an entire octave. S rank? S rank. The staff member behind me stood up so fast his chair fell over. Because here is how it works in a place like Jiangshui City. An S rank awakening is a municipal event. It means welfare resources, priority abyss slots, a training budget, sponsorship, and a city official on television saying the words our own. Jiangshui had not produced one in 4 years. That year, they produced exactly one, me. My teacher's disappointment went through about 6 emotions in 3 seconds and came out the other side as a smile she had not planned on. And then the class turned around. I want to be accurate about this because it happened fast enough to give a person whiplash. The same guys who had spent the morning telling each other that I was going to end up sweeping a factory floor came at me in the hallway like I owed them money in the friendliest possible way. Brother Bo, my dad's restaurant tonight on the house. We've got vintage mutai, the real stuff. It's been in the cellar since before I was born. Brother Bo, you remember I lent you a pen in 9th grade? I did not remember. Nobody has ever lent me a pen. Chen Wei watched the whole thing from 3 steps back with the expression of a man having a religious experience. This is growth, he said quietly when they'd finally peeled off. This is what adult life is. This is what adult life is. I hate it. You're going to be great at it. He went an awakened monk, by the way. B rank. He came out grinning like an idiot, and I told him it was a bad class, and he told me low competition, and that is the last time in this story anybody was allowed to call him stupid, because 8 days later, he came into a nightmare abyss after me with a staff and no plan, and I'll get to that. Home was a relief house on the edge of the district, 2 rooms, a shared water pipe, and a door that only locked if you lifted it while you turned the key. My parents disappeared when I was small. My grandfather raised me until the year before last, when he stopped. Since then, it has been the house and me, and the house is winning on points. I sat on the floor with the lights off because the lights cost money, and I opened my panel. Level 1, Health 1100, Intelligence 13, 1 contract slot. Then I opened the book I'd bought for 11 yuan from a second-hand stall, which is the only textbook that exists for my entire class. Playing the Summoner class from scratch by Wang Kong. Page 1. I am not exaggerating, and I am not paraphrasing. Page 1 of the only Summoner textbook in the world says, please abandon the Summoner class. If you have already chosen it, please be mentally prepared for the day when it is time to go and get a factory job. The man wrote a 400-page book and opened it by begging the reader not to read it. I decided right then that I was going to meet Wang Kong someday, and that when I did, I was going to make him rewrite that page. Then I went shopping, which took under a minute because there was exactly one thing on the list I could afford. Summon. Goblin. 500 yuan. 500. For reference, the cheapest level 0 warrior skill in that same shop was 12,000. My entire class was priced like a clearance bin, and the goblin was the sale item in the clearance bin. I read the contract out and the circle lit up on my floor, and out of it came a creature about waist high, green, with ears like dinner plates and an expression of profound personal disappointment. Health 400, attack 32.5, 32.5. There are lamps with better numbers. He looked at me. I looked at him. 2 guys at the bottom of the world. All right, I said. Let's fix both of us. I opened Demon Contract and I burned 600 points of my maximum health, and I want you to sit with that for a second, because there is no undo button on that operation. 600 health. Gone. Forever. At level 1. Out of 1100. 60 talent points. Goblin, Tier 1. Goblin Warrior. Health 800. Goblin, Tier 2. Elite Goblin Warrior. Health 1500. Goblin, Tier 3. Goblin Wolf Rider. health 3000, coefficient 5.0, and a skill called Wolf Cavalry Charge that hits for 1640. 1640. My starting summon did 32. I spent 6,000 on a novice staff and 500 more on a piece of summon gear called Sharp Blade Teeth, and then I slotted the Butler emblem, and the bond activated, and the Goblin changed. VIP Steward Goblin Wolf Rider, health 3900, attack 120, enhanced Wolf Cavalry Charge, 3000 damage, 3 targets. He also got a little coat. I want that in the record. The bond gave him a coat and gloves, and the very first thing he did in his new life was turn to his wolf and start grooming it, slowly and with tremendous dignity, the way you would groom a poodle before a show. A gentleman. I had summoned a gentleman. My own health was now 490, less than the wolf's. Don't die, I told him. Genuinely, if you die, I have nothing. He straightened his coat. Midnight at the Cold Street Abyss lobby, and the lobby was doing what lobbies do, which is that every team in the room was hunting warriors, like warriors were the last taxi in the rain. Warrior needed, 1 slot will pay. Any warriors? Shield warrior counts. There was a 5-man squad in the corner that was 5 warriors. 5, no healer, no ranged, no brain. They looked delighted with themselves. Chen Wei couldn't get on a team. He'd been trying for an hour, and he had that specific hollow look. They asked what my class was, he said. I said monk. One guy actually said sorry. Did you tell them about the low competition? Please don't. Over by the notice board, a group was talking about a squad of pure rookies who'd gone in that afternoon without a carry. You know what came out? The guy said. A pile of minced meat. They sent it out in a bag. So I paid 100 yuan for a lobby-wide broadcast, and here is what I put on it. Summoner Recruiting 4. I am competing for the clear record. You do not need to fight. You do not need to be strong. Frankly, it is better if you are not, because here is the mechanic nobody in that room had bothered to read. Abyss difficulty scales to the number of people who walk in. Bring 4 dead weights, and the whole place levels up to meet the 5 of us, and then I kill it by myself and eat 5 people's worth of experience. I did not put that part on the broadcast. The lobby read it, and the lobby laughed, and then something worse happened, which is that my own classmates took half a step backward. Physically, away from me, like the offer was contagious. The first person to walk up was a girl in a hood, baby-faced, maybe 16, with the coldest negotiating eyes I have ever seen on a human being. Li Mei, assassin. She looked at my broadcast, then at me. 15,000 each. 5,000. 15. 5, and you don't have to swing at anything. She considered this for exactly 1 second. 5, and I'm bringing someone. The someone was a tall girl with the posture of a family that used to be somebody, which I later learned was exactly what she was. Du Anning. First-tier family, 3 generations back. Currently the kind of first tier where the furniture has been sold. She looked at me for a long moment. You're the S rank. I'm the summoner. Those are 2 different sentences, and you chose the second one. She said it like she was filing it away. Fine. And the 5th was Chen Wei's coach. A man named He Jin, 3 years older than us, a monk, stuck at level 1 for 2 years, 3,000 a month, who had to borrow money to pay me for the privilege of being carried into a hole in the ground. He handed over the cash in an envelope that had been folded and refolded until it was soft. Don't make that face, he said. I've been at level 1 for 2 years. Do you know what that is? That's not a career. That's a hobby I can't afford. I took the envelope. Then let's go make it a career. Cold Street on simple difficulty is a residential block that died in the middle of an ordinary evening and never got told. Streetlights on, laundry on the lines, doors half open, and walking around in it, cold corpses, level 1, 500 health, moving with that specific stagger that means the thing wearing the body is not the thing that grew up in it. The first one came around a parked car and my 4 passengers all did something. Li Mei went invisible. Du Anning stepped behind me. Chen Wei raised his staff. He Jin made a sound. I said, Goblin. The wolf rider was already gone. There was a soft crack from 30 meters up the street and a number floated over the corpse. -693. Then 2 more corpses came out of a stairwell and the goblin didn't even bring the wolf around, he just fired from the saddle twice and both of them went down with holes in their foreheads. -666, -782. Headshots. My 500 yuan goblin had archery mastery and he was using it to put arrows through skulls at range while wearing a little coat. Level 2. Behind me, He Jin said, in the voice of a man watching his rent get paid, summoners are strong. No, I said. Summoners are not strong. My buddy is strong. Learn the difference. It matters. Deeper in, the corpses got promoted. Level 4, 2,000 health, and the road narrowed into a choke point between a wall and a delivery truck, which is where I set up. I want to be precise about what I set up because it became famous later and I have never once apologized for it. I brought a reclining chair, a folding one, the kind old men take to the park. I brought a thermos of hot water. I brought instant coffee, the good kind, because I had just come into some money. I sat down in the choke point, put the thermos on the ground, and told the goblin to work. The first level 4 came through and the goblin hit it with a leaping hammer for 890 and a stun, and then wound up the charge and put the whole thing through its chest, minus 1750, and the body came apart at the middle. Chen Wei spilled his tea down his own shirt. You brought a chair, he said. I brought 2. The other one's for you, but you have to earn it. By the time we hit the Central Park rooftop, the operation had become something I am still proud of. He Jin turned out to have worked 3 months in a barbecue shop before he gave up on being a professional, so He Jin was on the grill. Du Anning made tea properly with the whole ceremony on a rooftop in a dead district. Li Mei plated the snacks and stole 2 of everything. I was in the recliner with a portable heater going, and the twin fire demons I'd bought that afternoon were down in the street cooking anything that came within 40 meters. Chen Wei took a photo. I made him post it. Abyss, coffee, barbecue, cold corpses, and great god Lin Bo. Wave 1 came up the fire escape, level 5, and the goblin killed the lead one with 3 arrows before it cleared the railing. Minus 928, minus 901, minus 910, level 4, then level 5, and He Jin put down his tongs. Lin Bo. He was trying to be casual and failing so badly it was painful. Next run. Nightmare whatever. Take me with you. I'll pay. 100,000. I can take a loan. I've got a brother. 300,000. He blinked. 300? Because the next one is Nightmare level, and Nightmare level on Cold Street has never been cleared by anybody. The rooftop went very quiet. The grill hissed. Du Anning set down her cup. 600,000, she said. For both of us. Li Mei grabbed her sleeve. We don't have money. Take out a loan, Du Anning said, without looking away from me. And He Jin, who was a decent man in a bad situation, asked the honest question. Why us? You could sell those slots for triple to any rich kid in the lobby. I thought about lying and then decided the truth was more fun. Because what I want is for the people who wouldn't team with me tonight to spend the rest of the year regretting it, I said. And because you know how to grill meat, she knows how to brew tea. Li Mei knows the rules better than anybody in that lobby, and all 4 of you are good looking. If I'm going to make a spectacle out of this, I'd like it to photograph well. The boss of Simple Cold Street was a level 7 with 11,000 health and an ice armor that blocked 3 hits every 30 seconds, which is a very clever mechanic if the thing hitting you attacks 3 times in one animation. Wolf Cavalry Charge, 3 targets, minus 5,762, minus 5,542, minus 4,819. Exactly enough. It came apart on the first pass and the armor never got a second cycle. Level 5. Ice armor and a pair of novice mage boots on the floor. And on the way out, the sky spoke to the entire lobby. Summoner Squad has broken the all-time clear record for Cold Street, simple difficulty, 2 hours 48 minutes 23 seconds. Previous record, 3 hours 49 minutes. We stepped out of the gate into total silence. You have to understand that a lobby at 2 in the morning is 100 people arguing. It was not arguing. Every face in the room was turned toward 5 people, one of whom was carrying a folding chair under his arm. Then it broke, and they came at me all at once. Brother Bo, 1 slot, name your price. Lin Bo, my team has an A-rank warrior, we can carry you. Do you know the difference between you and Neja? I asked the A-rank. He stopped. What? Neja has 3 heads and 6 arms. You have 1 head and 2 arms. Work on it. Later, in the tent outside the gate, Chen Wei and I sat with the flap open and did not celebrate. We could go back in there and beat our chests, he offered. We could. Or we go home, open a music app, and be quietly emotional about it in the dark like normal people. That one, he said. Let's do that one. The record pack gave me an ice crystal pendant, silver, level 5, 1 ice immunity a minute. Nice. Fine. Whatever. That was not the reason I was sitting in a tent at 4 in the morning with the panel open. I burned 1,000 more max health. Goblin General, Tier 4, base health 8,000, coefficient 6.0, and with it a skill that changed the entire shape of my life, General's Command. He raises a horn, and out of the white mist behind him comes an army, 2 wolf riders, 5 archers, 5 death knights, 5 shield bearers, 1 wizard, 18 units, on call, on a cooldown, forever. I had been a guy with a pet, now I was a guy with a regiment. Then I bought a second summon, Fire Spirit 2000 yuan, and I burned everything I had left down to 60 points of base health. 60. A hard sneeze would have finished the job. Twin Fire Demons, Tier 3. Twin Contract, which means every cast happens twice and every point of fire damage is doubled. Flame Cage, 2100 a second. 2 runes came with level 5. Gold, Focus on companionship, which spawns training dummies that pull aggro and pays me 10 talent points every clear. Silver. Library card, a book of emblems that hands me another butler emblem and an equipment forging tool. And then my phone rang, and it was my homeroom teacher, and she was using the careful voice. Linbo, the mayor would like to see you. Mayor Chen Guang, the man whose office had somehow lost my S-rank subsidy between the announcement and the bank. Tell the mayor, I said, that I'm about to enter a nightmare-level abyss. There was a silence on the line that I enjoyed more than I should have. Money briefly, because the money is funny. He Jin went to his older brother He Hong, who runs a martial arts hall and has never in his life said an interesting sentence, and asked for 500,000. He Hong wrote the check and said, and I quote, "This can be recorded in the family genealogy. Li Mei and Du Anning went to a loan shark for 2 million. The loan shark was a man with tattoos up both arms, who opened negotiations by asking for photographs as collateral and specified what kind. Du Anning did not say anything. She just looked at him. I have seen that look since, aimed at a boss with 200,000 health, and I can tell you the boss took it better." The man pulled up our clear record, read it twice, and lent them the money at a rate that suggested he wanted very much to end the conversation. The morning of the nightmare run, 4 A ranks and a B rank broke the normal difficulty record, and the leader of that team came to find me, Si Ming, A rank warrior, good hair. Handsome in a way that had clearly never been tested. His father is Zi Gong, who runs the resource department of Jiangshui City, and I want you to hold on to that sentence because it becomes important in about 4 minutes. He arrived with 3 people behind him, stopped in front of my table, and delivered a line he had obviously rehearsed. "We've discussed it," Ximing said. "We have decided to allow you to join our team." I looked up from my noodles. "Sorry," I said. "Who are you guys?" One of his teammates made a strangled noise. "Also," I said, "your flexing skills need work. You led with permission. Permission isn't a flex, it's a favor. You have to make it sound like a threat." A guy behind him, Lin Kai, went for the moral angle, which is always what they go for. "You're bringing shame to Jiangshui City, an S-rank refusing to cooperate with," Li Mei laughed out loud. Du Anning did too, which was worse, because Du Anning does not laugh. Jiming left with his ears red. By noon the forum had decided what I was. Lin Bo is getting carried away. Coward Lin Bo, trash summoner, hiding behind a lucky record. Simple difficulty is called simple for a reason. Someone explain this to the class monitor. I read all of it, every page. I want to be honest about that, because people always claim they don't read it. I read it twice. Then Du Anning bought 5 invisibility potions at 200,000 each and handed one to every person on the team, including herself, which is when I understood that she had decided we were going to live, and I paid 50,000 yuan for a server-wide announcement. Summoner Squad has entered the Cold Street Abyss. Nightmare difficulty. 50,000 yuan. For a sentence. My grandfather would have come out of the ground for that. The lobby lost its mind. Somebody posted that if a summoner cleared Nightmare, he would do a handstand and eat something I will not describe. Somebody else offered a 5-speed electric fan as a prize. And Ziming's team, who had been loudly planning to go in right behind us and show everyone how it was really done, quietly did not. "That's not being ruthless," their B rank said on the forum, in a post they later deleted. "That's not valuing your life." He was closer to right than he knew. Nightmare Cold Street was the same street. That was the first thing that got me. Same laundry, same half-open doors, same delivery truck at the choke point where I'd had my coffee 11 hours earlier, but the corpses had names now, and the names were jobs. The first one came out of a shop front with a bone cleaver in one hand, and the tag above it read, "Pork Shop Owner Cold Corpse, Level 6, and he had 10,000 health, which is boss numbers on a mob body. He was fat, he had an apron, he had, and I want to stress that I was not prepared for this, a little laminated price list still pinned to the wall behind him with the day's cuts written in chalk. "Goblin," I said, "charged smash. Don't be polite." The wolf came in at an angle. The general swung the hammer through its whole arc, and the number that came up was -6,823, and the pork shop owner left his feet. He flew about 15 meters up the street and landed in the middle of 4 or 5 level 5s who had been shambling toward us in a clump, and all of them went down like a bowling frame. He Jin made a noise into his own hands. The pork shop owner dropped his cleaver and one other item, which the system described as high-quality pork, with a note attached. Best to cook it thoroughly. Eating it raw will cause diarrhea. "The Abyss," said Li Mei slowly, "just gave you food safety advice. The Abyss cares about me. 2 blocks in, a restaurant. And in the restaurant, a chef. Chef Cold Corpse, level 9, 17,000 health, and he had 2 skills, and I am going to give you both of them exactly as the system wrote them. Look, a cleaver. Look. A pile of cleavers. The second one is not a joke, and it is not a translation error. He threw about 40 knives at once in a fan, and one of them went through the wolf's shoulder and pinned it to a door frame. He Jin shouted something. Chen Wei started forward. Du Anning had her hand on her weapon. I did not get out of the chair because I was eating a grilled sausage. Send the fire demons, He Jin said. If the fire demons go and fight, I said, who is going to grill the sausages? There was a pause where 4 people considered leaving me. Then the goblin general pulled the knife out of the wolf, got back in the saddle, and put 6 arrows into the chef in under 3 seconds, and the chef fell forward into his own steam table. 2 drops. The first was a blood-stained chef's hat, and the system attached a warning to it, which no item had ever done before. Warning, do not wear this in Cold Street. Someone here hates this hat. I read that twice and felt the shape of the whole abyss shift under me. Somebody in here had a grudge. Somebody in here was keeping score. The second drop was a cake. It was on a stand under a glass dome, the way you display it in a shop window, and it was blood red, and there were things arranged on the top of it that had been inside a child. The system called it a delicious cake, made by the chef, for the centenary of Fuyun Street. Nobody said anything for a while. Take it, Du Anning said finally. I know. I'm saying it out loud because you were going to hesitate. I put the cake in my bag. I want to be clear that I hated doing it and that I did it anyway, because there is a version of this job where you throw up in an alley and go home, and there is a version where you carry the horrible thing to the place it needs to go, and I had already decided which one I was. Central Park was the wall. Elite Cold Corpse, level 13, 39,000 health, standing in the middle of an open plaza with about 60 ordinary corpses around it in a loose ring, and open ground on every side, which meant no choke point, no truck, no wall to put my back against, which is exactly the situation I had bought an army for. General, I said, command. He raised the horn to his mouth and blew, and the sound it made was not a fantasy sound. It was a low, ugly industrial note, like a factory shift ending. White mist came off the pavement in a line 40 meters wide. 5 shield bearers came out first and locked their shields into a wall. Then 2 wolf riders took the flanks. Then 5 archers formed up behind the shields with the unhurried competence of men who have done this 10,000 times. Then 5 death knights, which are exactly what they sound like and which I will explain in a minute. And last, a wizard in a hood with a stick. 18 goblins in formation on a plaza in a dead city. Aim, said my general. The archers raised. Fire. 2/3 of the swarm died before a single corpse reached the shield line. Not damaged. Died. Volley, 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 and the plaza filled up with the sound of arrows going into meat, and the elite was still 40 meters out and screaming. Behind me, the twin fire demons were grilling lamb chops on a spit because I had brought lamb chops. Du Anning came and stood next to my chair. She watched the formation reload. The summoner textbook, she said. Wang Kong. There's a line in the middle of chapter 4. He writes that if a summoner ever truly comes into his talent, one man will be an army. I read it. I sneered at it at the time, she said. I remember exactly where I was sitting. The elite got to 30 meters and stopped, because at 30 meters the archers had done enough and the wolf riders came around both sides at once, and it came apart without a single goblin dying. Total damage taken by my team across the entire engagement. Some scratches on 3 shields. It dropped an ice blade, a silver level 10 dagger, which I offered to the 2 assassins for 200,000. You want us to pay you, Li Mei said, for loot in an abyss that we are already paying you to be in. Correct. That's obscene. Do you want it or not? She wanted it. The human skin spider was on the 4th street and I heard it before I saw it because it made a sound like a wet coat being dragged. Level 15 elite, 60,000 health, attack 1,050. It had a human head. Specifically, and I say this because it matters later, it had the village chief's head, sitting on top of a body that had been stitched together out of human scalps and human hair, and it moved on legs that bent the wrong way. I did not send the goblins first. Fire demons, I said. All of it. Twin contract means 2 of everything. 2 flame cages went up around it at once, 3,000 damage a second, and the thing screamed with a man's voice from a spider's body, while the goblin wizard walked calmly forward and cast sleep on it. Sleep. On a level 15 elite. The wizard I had gotten for free as unit number 18 in a horn call. Flame cage plus wolf cavalry charge into a sleeping target came out at minus 14,891, and I remember the number because Chen Wei read it out loud in a voice like a man calling a horse race. And then I went and looked in the well. There was a well in the courtyard behind the 4th street, and there was a woman in it, and she had been in it a very long time. I had the wolf riders bring her up. I did it myself, which is to say I stood there and made myself watch while it happened, and when she came over the lip, I said the only thing I could think of. No offense intended, I'm just taking you where you belong. Behind me, the spider stopped screaming, then it started screaming differently. Brutality. That is the actual mechanic name, and it is what happens when a nightmare elite decides that the fight has become personal. Its health came back by 2/3. Its resentment went up in a column you could see, and it went through my shield bearers. Not past. Through. Minus 5,489 per hit, and shield goblins have 4,000 health. Back, I said. Everybody back. Now, go. We went back. The wolf riders died covering it. Both of them. And then my goblin wizard did something that I did not order and could not have ordered because I did not know the skill existed. He stopped running. He turned around. He reached into his own chest with both hands and pulled out one of his ribs. Life sacrifice. The bone went into the ground and the twin fire demons turned from red to purple and everything inside a 40-meter circle turned to ash. Not burned. Ash. The pavement, the laundry lines, the well housing, the spider. The spider first. When it cleared, my wizard was gone and there was a 3-piece gold set on the ground where the spider had been, and I picked all 3 pieces up and did not feel good about any of it. We rested at a lake that had not frozen. I had lost all 5 shield bearers, both wolf riders, and the wizard. The goblin general sat off to one side with his back to us and did not want to be spoken to, and I let him have it. Li Mei counted the losses out loud, which is a thing she does when she is upset. Then she asked the question that changed the second half of my year. Lin Bo. The S-rank welfare package. What did you actually get? A congratulations letter. She stopped counting. What? A letter. It's a nice letter. It has the city seal on it. Du Anning had been staring at the water. She turned around slowly, and I watched a girl from a family that used to be somebody put 4 things together in about 6 seconds. S-rank resources are allocated by the Municipal Resource Department, she said. The Resource Department is run by Z-Gang. Z-Gang has exactly 1 son. His son is A-rank and got a level 10 set that no A-rank in this city should be able to afford. The lake made lake noises. Say it, I said. You paid for Z-Ming's equipment, she said. Every piece. And the thing is, I had suspected it for about 2 weeks, and hearing it out loud in another person's voice did not make me angry the way you would think. It made me calm. Because up until that moment, I had spent 50,000 yuan on a broadcast out of spite, and spite is expensive and stupid, and I had been slightly embarrassed about it. Now it turned out I had underspent. At the same time, in an office with better heating than my entire house, Mayor Chen Guang was on the phone with my teacher. I did not see this. I found out later from 3 different people, and every one of them told it the same way, which is how you know it happened. Wang Lei, my homeroom teacher's colleague, and the only adult in that building who ever went out on a limb for me, called the mayor directly and asked him where an S-rank student's resources had gone. And Chen Guang said, "Resources are really scarce this year. You need to understand our decision." Then he hung up, and he called his secretary in, and he told the secretary to prepare an obituary. In advance. Before the run finished. With the angle already chosen, which was that the young man had been arrogant, that he had been warned, that he had entered a nightmare abyss against advice, and that the city grieved. The secretary wrote 2 words in his notebook while the mayor was talking, and the 2 words were, "Avoid suspicion." I have thought about that a lot since, not about Chen Guang, who is exactly what he looks like. About the secretary, who understood the whole shape of it in 1 sentence and wrote himself a note about deniability. That is the part of this world that took me longest to get used to, not the monsters. There was a grave in the middle of the lake, not on the shore. In the middle, on a little rise of mud, 1 mound with no stone and no name, and the water around it was the only water in Cold Street that had not frozen. We walked out to it, and about halfway, a voice came up through the ice on all sides at once, and it was not one voice, it was maybe 100 of them, saying the same words at the same time, slightly out of step. "Are you also here to persuade me to let them go?" Then the whole lake froze under our feet in 1 crack that ran from the shore to the mound, and the level 15s came up out of it. The boss was a boy, Cursed Anrui, level 15, Curse Origin, God of Cold Prison, 200,000 health, 1,500 attack. He was 7 or 8 years old. He was standing on the mound in clothes that had been good once, and he was hollow, and I am going to leave it there, because you do not need the details, and I did not want them either. He looked at us the way a kid looks at adults who have come to the door. "Lin Bo," Du Anning said. "That's a child." "That's 200,000 health," I said, "wearing a child." He raised 1 hand and the air went white, and something called piercing cold went through my shield for 4,187, and I want you to remember that at this point in the story, my maximum health was 490. The only reason I did not die on the spot was the 10,000 point magic shield on my ring, and the shield ate the whole thing and shattered. I drank the invisibility potion, and while I was invisible, I did the math, and the math said this: 200,000 health, my sustained damage is not going to get there before he gets to me, so I need burst, and I only own 1 kind of burst. Death Knights. Here is what a Goblin Death Knight is. It is a small green man in black armor who can blink about 15 meters, and who, on command, will detonate himself. His blood is poisonous, and it is flammable, and there is a lot of it for his size. I have never once been comfortable giving that order. I have given it about 400 times. The first one blinked behind Anne Rui and went off for 5,874 and set the ice on fire. And Rui turned around, and the second one he caught in midair and froze solid before it could blow, and then he dropped it, and it shattered like a plate, which is when I used the only active skill I own, Summoned Beast Berserk. It is not clever, it does not have a good animation, it makes everything I own hit harder and stop caring for a short window, and that is the entire design. 4 Death Knights blinked at once from 4 directions, 30,000. The general came in behind the blast with the wolf at full speed, and I gave him everything, both emblems, every buff, the whole bank, minus 32,489, and Rui went down to about 40,000, and then he stopped being a boss fight and started being something worse, brutality. His resentment column went up, and 2 new skill lines wrote themselves into his panel in front of me, and I have never seen the system do that before or since, and both of them were questions. Skill 4. Father. Skill 5. Mother. The human skin spider came out of the tree line with the village chief's head on it. The woman from the well came up through the ice. He had made them. Both of them. He had been down here alone for however long it had been, and he had built himself a father out of the thing that ate him and a mother out of the thing they threw away, and he had been keeping them in the dark and coming back to visit. Behind me, Jin said, "I want to live." I turned around. He was already backing toward the gate marker, and his hands were up, and he was crying in the flat way men cry when they have decided something and hate themselves for it. "I'm sorry. I want to live. I've got a brother. I borrowed off him. He stopped. "Tell Chen Wei I'm sorry. Forced exit costs you 2 levels and 60% of your experience on your next run. It is designed to be expensive so that nobody does it casually. He did it anyway, and the gate took him, and I did not say anything to stop him, because there is no version of that speech that is not a lie. Then Chen Wei went past me the other way, at a dead run, with his monk staff up, screaming. "Chen Wei, no. Shut up," he shouted back. "I'm being brave. It's very hard." And Li Mei went invisible and moved up on the flank without being told, and when I asked her later why, she gave me the only completely honest answer anyone gave me that night. "Because I can only turn my life around if I become a professional," she said. "Otherwise it's no different from being dead, so it's not really a choice, is it?" Duaning stayed exactly where she was and covered the retreat lane, and the last thing she said to Jin's back as the gate closed was, "Don't harbor any inappropriate thoughts about me later. You don't have the qualifications. Get lost." Which is, I think, the meanest thing I have ever heard, and also, she was right. Li Mei was the one who noticed. She was on the flank with nothing to do but watch, and she said it over the team channel in a completely level voice. "Lin Bo, your experience bar." I looked. The difficulty scaling I had bought 4 passengers for had been paying out the whole time, and the boss was worth more than everything else in the abyss combined, and the bar was not moving, it was climbing. Level 10, 20 free attribute points. I dumped every one of them and turned around and burned them straight through Demon Contract into talent points. 150, Twin Flame Dragon Snake, Tier 4. The fire demons came apart and reformed as something long and coiled and stupidly bright, and it had 2 skills, and the second one is why the fight ended. Flame Breath, 4,872 a second, and Fire Snake Hell, 7,239 a second, plus 20 independent Fire Snake clones that hunt on their own. 20 became 60 because Twin Contract doubles everything, and the doubling doubled the clones, and 60 burning snakes went across the ice and wrapped the spider from 6 directions at once. And then the mother pinned Anne Rui. She came through the flames without slowing down, because she had never been able to be hurt by anything down here, and she got both arms around him and held him in the fire, and he let her. That is the moment the fight stopped being a fight, because I finally understood what I was looking at. The spider was not his father. The woman in the well was not his mother. He had built both of them out of memory and resentment, and he had built them wrong, and he had even written her an apology and put it in her mouth because he needed to hear it and there was nobody left to say it. So I went into my bag and took out the cake. I need to tell you about Fuyun Street, and I will do it fast because it is not a long story and it is not a complicated one. 100 years ago, it was a tourist street, and the tourists stopped coming, and 1 bad season turned into 3. And in the 3rd year, the shamanists said what shamanesses say, which is that there was something impure on the street, and everybody in that village looked around and picked the easiest target in it, which was the woman who was not right in the head and the son she was not supposed to have had. The village chief had brought her there years before as an unpaid servant, and when the boy was born, he denied it in public and kept her out of sight, and the whole street agreed to not know about it because the street was making money then. So when the money stopped, they had one person who was already outside and one child who already did not count, and they did what the shamaness told them, and they told each other it was for the centenary. The cook made a cake for the occasion, and on the day of it, the woman went through the crowd looking for a slice that was clean, and she found one single piece at the edge that was just cake, and she asked the cook if she could take it home. "Can I bring this to Enrui?" she said. "It's his birthday today." Nobody stopped her. Everybody let her ask. And then the village chief walked her to the well behind the 4th Street, and he pushed her in, and the last thing he said to her was that a woman like her should never have expected to be part of the family in the first place. I stood on the ice in front of a child with 200,000 health, and I held out one clean slice of cake with a candle in it. "She was looking for the piece with nothing wrong with it," I said. "She found it. She was carrying it to you." He did not move. "She said something else too," I said. "She said she hoped she wasn't your mother. Because if she wasn't, then maybe you could have been somebody else's, and then you'd have had a birthday." The char on his face cracked from the jaw upward, and underneath it there was a face, just a kid's face, round, unremarkable, a little chapped at the mouth from the cold, the way any kid's would be. "You are not wrong," I told him. "I want to be extremely clear about this, because I think you have had 100 years to decide otherwise. Whatever they told you, whatever they made you believe about why it had to be you, the one who was wrong was never you." Then I reached back into the bag and took out the other thing, the cursed blood cake, the whole thing, the red one. I want to be honest about what I did next, because people have described it since as merciful, and it was not. That cake had a use. If it went into the ground of Fuyan Street, every soul on that street would be put back into a body. Not resurrection. Restoration of sensation. The cook, the butcher, the fishmonger, the village chief, the shamaness, all of them back in their own skins permanently, with everything that entails. Du Anning figured out what it did about 2 seconds after I did. "Lin Bo," she said. "If you give him that, I know. They'll be able to feel it. I know." I put it in his hands. Achievement unlocked. Living Yama. Intelligence plus 1%. Strength plus 1%. Damage against cold corpses plus 100%. And Rui looked down at the cake, and then up at me, and he smiled, and it was the first genuinely frightening thing I had seen all night. "It only counts as a proper birthday," he said in a boy's voice. "If there are guests, let us have a banquet." We did not stay for it. Out in the lobby, at that exact moment, Zi Ming was being congratulated. He had just broken the hard difficulty record, which is a genuinely good result, and there was a little crowd around him, and someone had brought a banner, and he was doing the modest thing with his hand. And then a man nobody recognized walked into the middle of the crowd and said loudly that he was Zi Ming's younger brother, and that he wanted everybody to know how his big brother had gotten that level 10 set. I have never found out who that man was. I have 3 guesses, and I like all of them. He was still talking when the sky went off. "Congratulations to Summoner Squad for breaking the Cold Street Abyss record. Nightmare difficulty, 7 hours, 18 minutes, 11 seconds. And then, because the system is a bastard and I love it, He Jin will receive no rewards. Reason: desertion during battle." He Jin was in the lobby when it said that. He had been sitting on a bench by the wall for 3 hours with his hands between his knees. He heard his own name read out to 400 people as a coward, and he went down. Somebody called for a healer, and a level 10 priest came over and brought him back around, quickly and efficiently, and then stood there and waited, because the priest wanted to watch him wake up. That is the part of the lobby I never got used to either. The forum did not create new threads. That is what made it beautiful. It went back to the old threads. Coward Lin Bo, trash summoner. Lin Bo is getting carried away. Every one of them got necromanced from the bottom, post by post, by the same people who had written the originals, each one now explaining at length that they had always suspected there was more going on. And 140 kilometers away, a city called Shangyu read the same announcement, and their mayor did not post anything. Their mayor sent a man, Guo Ping, resource minister of Shangyu City, level 42, which means he covers 140 kilometers in about 2 minutes. He was standing outside the gate when I came out. He had a folder under his arm, and he did not open it. "Lin Bo. I'm tired. I'll be quick." He looked at me for a second, and then he skipped every part of the speech he had prepared and went straight to the bottom of it. "Do you want to make Chen Guang regret it?" I stopped walking. Behind him, my teacher, Wang Lei, was standing by the wall with a cardboard box under his arm. I found out later what the box was. That morning, he had gone into the mayor's office and demanded my resources, and they had offered him a promotion to shut up, and he had said no and cleaned out his desk. Then, on the way out, he had gone to the storeroom and taken the resource allocation anyway, all of it, the whole S-rank package, and walked out of the building with it to give to me. He was 51 years old, and he had just ended his career over a class the whole country considers a joke. Shangyu called him 3 hours later and offered him a job. Guo Ping laid out the offer. household registration, a villa, priority abyss slots, a training budget, and the sentence that mattered, which was that Shang Yu had a stage 2 nightmare abyss and a mayor who had personally written the only guide to it. I have 2 conditions to stay in Jiangshui, I said. He waited. 1. Jiming gives back my resources, not the value, the items, in the condition they're in, with the forging levels he's already paid for. Reasonable. 2. Chen Guang and Ji Gang apologize, in public, on camera, using my name. Guo Ping's secretary, who had been taking notes, stopped taking notes. Nobody said anything for a while. So, I said, is it me leaving Jiangshui City, or is it Jiangshui City forcing me out? I already knew the answer. I asked because I wanted it on the record, and because there was a man standing by a wall with a cardboard box who deserved to hear somebody make them say it out loud. Chen Guang did not apologize. I want to describe the meeting where he decided not to, because I have it from the secretary, who eventually got tired of writing notes to himself about deniability and started writing them to other people. Zhigang said it first. I only have one son. That was the whole argument. Not that I was wrong, not that the resources had been correctly allocated, just that. I have one son, and you are asking me to take things off him and hand them to a boy from the relief houses. And Chen Guang, who is a mayor and therefore thinks in factions, laid out the actual problem, which had nothing to do with either of us. Zhigang's family sits under a man called Ji Jun, level 65, who controls team formation rights for stage 4 abysses in the whole southern district. If Chen Guang made Zhigang apologize on camera, Chen Guang lost Xiejun. If Chen Guang lost Xiejun, Jiangshui City lost its stage 4 slots. If Jiangshui lost its stage 4 slots, Chen Guang stopped being a mayor, so he tried the other lever. He tried to freeze my household registration so I could not transfer. And that is where a man who has spent 30 years managing people discovered he had never once looked at my file because there was no registration to freeze. I had never had one. My parents disappeared before anyone got around to it, and my grandfather could not read the forms. For 18 years, legally, I was not a citizen of Jiangshui City. I was a person who happened to be standing in it. Chen Guang sat in his office and understood that he had spent a week trying to keep hold of somebody he had never actually been holding. Then he fired the 2 experts who had signed off on the resource transfer and had a note put in their files that would keep them from working anywhere in the province so that if it ever came up, there would be somebody to point at. I got the villa in Shangyu 3 days later. Before that, the loot, because the loot was ridiculous. 45,000 experience out of the clear, straight to level 13. The Frozen Hell Staff, Platinum Grade, Intelligence plus 150, Ice Damage plus 150%, and every 3rd skill I cast fires off a free Frozen Hell. The Resentment Ring, Platinum, which is the reason I am alive because it carries a 10,000 point magic shield. The Fish Killing Knife, which is summon gear, and which came with a flavor line I have never gotten over. After 30 years of killing fish, my heart is as cold as my knife. I gave that one to the Goblin General. And the Human Skin Spider 3-piece gold set, which I put on despite knowing exactly what it was made of, because 4,000 health plus 1,500 plus 2,000, and a set bonus called Resentment. Final numbers after everything: Intelligence 451, Health 10,300, 10,300. 2 weeks earlier I had burned myself down to 60 and slept badly about it. Then I bought my 3rd summon, and I want to explain the choice, because everybody who has ever looked at my roster asks about it. The options were Shadow Bat, War Centaur, Wasteland Wolf, and Rain Butterfly. The bat is a scout. The centaur hits hard. The wolf is a wolf. The butterfly is a support unit with no attack skill whatsoever, and it costs 30,000 yuan, which was 5 times the others. I bought the butterfly. Li Mei, who had come along because she does not trust me alone in shops, actually took the receipt out of my hand and read it twice. It doesn't do damage. No. It doesn't tank. No. It costs 30,000 and it makes things slightly better. Now you're getting it. Here is my reasoning, and it is the single best decision I made that year. Every summon I own is a damage dealer. Damage dealers are limited by 2 things, which are how long they can keep going and whether they are alive. A support unit does not add to my ceiling. It removes my floor. Also, she was pretty, and I am not made of stone. I sold the junk. The ice blade went for 270,000. The bloodstained chef's hat, which somebody in Fuyun Street hates, went for 120,000 to a collector who I hope is fine. The bone cleaver, 150,000. Novice sets, another 100. Chen Wei's gold grade shield opened at 3.4 million at auction, and I watched him make a sound like a kettle. For scale, a gold grade level 10 warrior weapon had gone for 13 million the week before. Then level 15 hit, and with it, 2 runes, both prismatic. I want you to understand how absurd that is. Prismatic is the top tier. I had drawn one on my very first roll, which people told me was the luckiest thing that would ever happen to me, and now I had drawn 2 at once. Windfall. Level times 100 talent points immediately and again on each of my next 3 level ups. Golden egg. It sits in my inventory and hatches after 22 abyss clears, and it does not say what is in it, and I have thought about that egg every single day since. Windfall paid out 1,300 points on the spot. The twin flame dragon snakes became twin magic fire flood dragons, tier 5. And the Goblin General became Goblin General, Heavy Cavalry Regiment, tier 5, and his horn stopped calling 18 units and started calling 26, plus 26 Heavy Cavalry behind them. 52 Goblins. The next tier would cost 3,000 points. The one after that, 5,000. The ladder gets steep fast, and I want that on the record because people look at where I ended up and assume it was smooth. Then I did the pettiest thing I have ever done, and it made me 700,000 yuan. I wrote a guide. 10,000 words on clearing Cold Street at nightmare difficulty, every mechanic, the pork shop owner's launch angle, the chef's cleaver fan and the exact timing on it, the spider's brutality trigger, and Rui's 2 hidden skills and what they mean. Priced at 100 gold beans, which is nothing, because I did not want it to be exclusive. I wanted it everywhere, and I led the guide before the table of contents, before the first mechanic with the photograph, the rooftop, the barbecue, the coffee. 5 people eating grilled lamb in a dead city while a wall of goblins killed things at 40 meters, 10,000 copies in one night. But that is not actually why I wrote it, and I only admitted the real reason to one person. Halfway through the guide, in the section on the boss, there is a paragraph about the forced exit penalty. And in that paragraph I explain, in flat technical language, that at the point Jin left, the boss had entered brutality, that my own maximum health was under 500, that a single piercing cold does over 4,000, and that a level 1 monk standing on that ice had a survival window of approximately 0 seconds. I did not defend him. I just published the numbers. The forum turned around inside a day. Jin went from the coward of Jiangshui City to a guy who had made an unwinnable call, and his brother stopped getting phone calls about it. Chen Wei asked me why I bothered. He could curse him, I said. You could curse him. Everyone who was standing on that ice gets to have an opinion about him for the rest of their lives. But what right did those outsiders have? Meanwhile, at my old school, on professional certificate day, Ziming was learning what it is like to be a punchline in a building where you used to be the answer. He heard his own name used 3 times in the hallway before lunch, and none of the times were about him. It had become a unit of measurement. Somebody failed a practical and got told not to pull a Ziming. Somebody bought expensive gear and got asked whose it was. His father had beaten him about it the night before, which I did not enjoy hearing and am not going to pretend I did. And the thing he could not get past, the thing he kept saying to anybody who would stand still, was this. I clearly invited him. I invited him onto my team. Why didn't he accept? He genuinely did not know. That is the part that stays with me. He had gone to the Abyss lobby that morning, fully intending, if I had said no in the wrong tone, to make sure I did not come out of Cold Street. He had that in his head, and he still could not understand why the offer had not landed as generosity. The villa in Shangyu was Guo Ping's own, and it had a kitchen bigger than my house, and there was a target on the table before I had put my bag down. Stage 2, Nightmare Difficulty, the Shangyu Ancestral Hall. I picked it for one reason. It is the only Stage 2 abyss in the province with a complete nightmare walkthrough, and the man who wrote that walkthrough is the mayor of Shangyu, Wang Hai, who went in himself and came out with most of his team. Most. I set the price for the passengers at 1 million each, and Guo Ping did not blink, which told me the city was paying. Confidence? He asked. About 50%. He wrote that down. I appreciated that he wrote it down instead of arguing with it. Then he asked what preparation I wanted, and I gave him a list. And the list is why the Shangyu Resource Department still tells this story at drinking parties. Chickens. 40 live chickens. For warding off evil, Guo Ping said slowly. Black dog blood, glutinous rice, rooster blood on the door. Who told you I want to ward off evil? He stopped. The ghosts have health bars, I said. Health bars are not a spiritual phenomenon, they are a target. I want the chickens because Shangyu free-range chicken is a regional specialty and I have never had it. Recruiting a 5th was harder than I expected, mostly because of the broadcast, which read, looking for 1 filler for a Stage 2 nightmare run. Combat ability not required, must be able to cook. Barbecue skills preferred, ability to grill kidneys strongly preferred. A level 18 warrior came, read it, demanded 800,000, and then stood there while I explained that the ad was serious about the kidneys. Are you playing games with me? He said, and left. He was, I found out later, the highest level professional to ever apply to one of my postings, and he walked away over a kidney joke, and I still think about the timeline where he did not. Guo Ping solved it by bringing his cousin, Guo Fen, Ranger. Wheat-colored, short hair, calluses on 3 fingers of her draw hand that told me she had shot a lot more than she had fought. Stuck at level 12 for a year, she had, in her own words, quit. 3 million per head, paid by the city. She agreed at the door, and then she looked at the Abyss designation on the terminal, and she went a shade lighter. This says nightmare. It does. The posting didn't say nightmare. The posting said barbecue. She stood there for about 10 seconds. I might force quit halfway. That's fine, I've had that happen. But the money is not refundable. She laughed, which I did not expect, and then she sent a message to Guo Ping from the gate that read like something a person writes when they are not certain about coming back, and Guo Ping read it in the middle of a municipal budget meeting and went out of a second-floor window. He arrived 4 minutes after we entered. There is footage. He is very fast for a bureaucrat. The Shangyu Ancestral Hall opens with a voice, and the voice is an old man, and he asks a question before you can see anything. The ancestors you worship, will they really bless you, or are the ones you worship really your ancestors? Then the light came up on a mountain road at night, and there was a thing standing in the middle of it, blocking the way, and it looked at us the way a bad dream looks at you. Road-blocking ghost. It has a stare that goes through your eyes and starts unpicking things behind them. Goblin, I said. Charge him. Minus 50,000. The road was empty. Guo Fen had not finished raising her bow. She stayed in that position for a second and then slowly lowered it. You're supposed to avoid its gaze, she said. As long as it has a health bar, I said. I am Ma Yunsheng. Chen Wei, 1 step behind me. Who is Ma Yunsheng? Nobody in this world. Forget it. There were copper coin strings on the road, 18 coins each, and each coin eats 1 mental attack. There were talismans in the roadside shrine, standard Ghost Abyss equipment, all of it built on the assumption that you cannot kill the thing and have to survive it instead. I took the coins anyway. I am not an idiot. I just wasn't going to plan around them. We cleared every road-blocking ghost on that road inside 40 minutes, which triggered the graveyard half an hour ahead of schedule, and the graveyard was where I discovered the actual rule of nightmare ghosts. They ignore 60% of all damage. Their health pools are pitiful, which means that against a normal team they are unkillable attrition monsters, and against 52 goblins and 2 flood dragons they are kindling. I set the whole graveyard on fire. While it burned, I went along the grave offerings and collected the fruit and handed Chen Wei an orange and a packet of biscuits. He looked at the orange. This is from a grave. It's from a plate. The plate is on a grave. Cemetery shopping, I said. The prices are unbeatable and nobody's ever in line. He ate the orange. He complained the entire time and ate all of it. The graveyard boss was the reason Wang Hai's guide has a hole in it. Wraith, Shangyu Village Chief, level 20 elite. 150,000 health, 2,500 attack, and the system gave him a title, which it does not do often, the first person to sacrifice his soul to the ancestors. He came out of his own grave, which was the largest one, and he went straight for me, because possession is his whole design, and I was the squishiest thing on the field by a factor of 10. He got inside my guard, he got his hands on my face, and then he hit the 10,000 point magic shield on the resentment ring, and the number that came up was white, which means it did not touch my health at all. Minus 6,458. He had spent his entire best move on a bracelet. Flood dragons, I said, with a ghost's fingers still in my hair. Breath. He went up like a dry hedge. The finest ingredients, I said, watching him burn, usually require the simplest preparation. Charcoal grilled wraith. Guo Fen made a small horrified noise, which was the first sound she had made in an hour, so I counted it as progress. He dropped a pipe. Village chief's pipe. Hold it in your mouth, and everything in Shangyu village treats you as the village chief. Wang Hai never got this. I know exactly why. His guide describes reaching this fight, taking the wraith to 5% health, and watching it become untouchable through something called separation of yin and yang. He assumed it was invulnerable by design, and wrote that the boss was unkillable and should be avoided. It is not unkillable. It is unkillable by damage that arrives 1 hit at a time. My flood dragons do damage per second in a cone, level 14, and an item in my pocket that made me the mayor of a haunted village. The village came into view at the bottom of the hill, and it was worse than the graveyard, because it was tidy. Lanterns lit, doors painted, washing put away, no people anywhere, and every single lantern burning green. So here's the plan, I said. Wang Hai's guide says the sacrifice happens at midnight, and the correct move is to hide in the 3 coffins in the ancestral hall until it passes. That's the whole guide, Guo Fen said. That's the entire second half. Right, we're not doing that. Li Mei. What are we doing? We're going to attend. 4 people looked at me. Or rather, I said, we are going to be the sacrifices. I gave the pipe to Chen Wei because I needed my mouth for talking, and because Chen Wei, when handed authority he has not earned, becomes a completely different and much funnier person. House by house, I did the thing I am least proud of in this entire abyss. The rule was simple. Every house had a talisman on the door, and the state of the talisman told you how strong the thing inside was. Fresh talisman, weak. Burned through, run. I sent the Goblin General to kick the door, then I closed it behind him, then I turned my back on it. Because these are nightmare ghosts, and nightmare ghosts feed on scare value, and scare value is generated by being witnessed. They evolve on your fear. They cannot evolve on a green man in a coat who has been killing fish for 30 years and does not have the imagination to be frightened. Blood tier wraith, hanged ghost, miser. Level 20 each, all of them, and every one of them died in a closed room to a squad of trolls while 5 humans stood outside in the street drinking tea and pointedly looking at the sky. What kind of ghost is it? Said one of my heavy cavalry in the middle of the 4th house, if it has a health bar. I want it noted that the goblins came up with that on their own. The old man found us in the square, which I had counted on, because a village that is putting on a sacrifice needs somebody to greet the sacrifices. He had a tongueless girl with him, 12, maybe 13. She stood slightly behind his shoulder and she watched everything. I traded him grilled meat for the history of the village, and I was not gentle about the trade. 3 sacrifices, he said. The first one during a drought, and the next morning the purple tea grew where nothing had grown, and the village got rich. The second when rivals came sniffing around the tea, and a plague went through and killed the outsiders, and coincidentally, everyone local who had been talking about leaving. And the third when the young men wanted to go to the city, so the chief broke their legs, and after that the tea stopped growing. So, I said, the tea stopped when you stopped being able to produce volunteers. The ancestors were displeased. Sure. Then he pointed at the ancestral hall, and he told us very kindly that midnight was coming and that we should hide in the 3 coffins and it would all be over by morning. The same advice, word for word, the exact advice in Wang Hai's guide. Which meant Wang Hai had stood in this square and been told the same thing by the same person and had believed him. We walked away and I put it together out loud because I think better when Li Mei is allowed to interrupt. Opium, Li Mei said. Purple tea that grows overnight and makes a village rich and makes everyone in it refuse to leave. That's my read. So there's no curse. There's a cash crop. There's a cash crop and a chief who needed a story for why the crop stopped. I looked back at the hall. But that's the small lie. Here's the big one. Everybody in this abyss believes the order of events is, the village made sacrifices, therefore the yin god came. Look at the actual timeline. The village chief is a wraith. He is trapped in the graveyard at the far end, unable to enter the village. Who traps the man who invented the religion? Duaning got there first. Someone who does not want him talking to visitors. Right, so the causality is backwards. The ghost village came first. The yin god came after, and it built the religion on top of a village that was already dead, and it keeps the chief penned up at the edge of the map because he is the one witness who could explain it. And the daily ritual, the one they perform every single night, is digging up his grave. Chen Wei, slowly. They're punishing him, forever, and they think they're worshipping. And the thing running it, I said, is not an ancestor, and is not a god. It is somebody this village did something to. Behind us, the old man had already slipped away toward the hall to report us. I let him, that was the point. But the tongueless girl did not go with him. When he came back through the square 20 minutes later, she took 1 step sideways, away from his shoulder, and stood on her own. I filed that. The pipe gambit was Chen Wei's finest hour. He put it in his mouth, squared his shoulders, and walked into the middle of the village square, and every door in the square opened at once. They wept, genuinely wept, a whole street of dead villagers at the sight of a man with a pipe. Village chief, you're finally back. And Chen Wei, who had never in his life had authority over anything, put his hands behind his back and became the worst small-town official you have ever seen. He inspected things, he tutted at a doorframe. He told a hanged ghost that standards had slipped. It was working perfectly, right up until the old man came back with somebody who had seen Chen Wei's face on the road. The old man opened his mouth. An arrow went through his throat from 40 meters. This man, Chen Wei announced, into total silence without missing a beat, was a traitor. And the corpse on the ground dissolved into a wraith in front of the entire village, which proved my theory to an audience of 100 dead people. The villagers looked at the thing that had been their neighbor and understood all at once that the people telling them who to sacrifice were not people. They took us to the ancestral hall themselves, escorted, respectfully. The hall had a copper vat in the center with a pale blue flame in it, 3 ancestral coffins along the back wall, and a clay statue of the 2-faced yin god. One half of the face was white with no eyes. The other half was black and furious. The hands were pressed together in prayer, and between the palms, where you could only see it from directly underneath, there was a blade. Charming, said Duaning. I looked at the statue for a while. Then I turned to the nearest villager and asked the question I had been holding since the graveyard. Of the women you bought, I said, how many are still alive now? The hall changed temperature. Are you talking about, the villager said, the sows? Every door in the ancestral hall slammed at once, and the wind that did it came from inside the building. Outside, my goblins started dying. The pigsty was at the east end of the village, and it was a row of sheds, and the villagers had used a word for the women who were kept in them, and had used the same word for so long that they had forgotten it was a word. Bought, used, and returned. 2 still alive at the last count anybody bothered to keep, and the thing running this abyss had been able to tolerate every single thing I had done. The graveyard on fire, the chief burned, 4 of her ghosts killed, a man with a pipe insulting her village to its face. She could not tolerate somebody saying it out loud. She came at us with everything, and the everything had a name. Wraith Aggregate, level 20 elite, 280,000 health. It is a fusion, and the system lists the components. Hanged, drowned, frozen, burned, wronged, vengeful. 6 kinds of dying stitched into one shape. It got a rope around Guofen's neck in the first 4 seconds. Du Anning cut her down, and then, while the girl was still on her knees coughing, said the thing that I think actually saved Guofen's career. You did not almost die. You almost got all of us killed. There is a difference, and you need to learn it tonight. Do not drag Linbo down. Guofen got up. She did not cry, and she did not quit, and for the rest of that abyss she was 10 meters back and left of me with an arrow on the string, and she never once needed to be told where to stand again. And then, over the fighting, from somewhere down the mountain road, we heard music. A swana, funeral music, played badly and cheerfully. A red sedan chair came up the road out of the mist, carried by 4 things that walked like men and were not, and the system helpfully told me what they were. Huang Pizi, weasel demons. Level 20 elites, 140,000 health each, and the sedan chair itself was also an elite, 300,000 health. The furniture was a boss. Inside it was a woman in red, and she was a day early. 6 elites at once, one of which was a piece of furniture. The goblin shield wall held the line at the hall steps. I want to say that plainly, because 5 shield goblins with 4,000 health each held against a 280,000 health aggregate long enough for me to work, and 3 of them did not get up afterward. The Death Knights blinked in and detonated, and their blood, which is poisonous and corrosive, went across the lacquer of the sedan chair and started eating it. The chair made a noise. Furniture should not make that noise. Then the goblin general drew the fish-killing knife. I have been killing fish for 30 years, he said, and my heart is as cold as my knife, minus 45,488. And then I did the thing that got written up in 3 separate forum posts under the heading, Is This Legal? The copper vat, 5 feet across, cast iron thick, with the pale blue ritual flame in the bottom of it. I had the heavy cavalry flip it over on top of the Wraith aggregate, and then I had the flood dragons heat the outside of it. The aggregate is a fusion of 6 kinds of bad death. It turns out you can add a 7th. It was still screaming when something in the back of the hall rang a bell. 1 clean note, and every wraith in the building stopped moving. The real ancestor, the actual original one, the man whose bones were in the middle coffin, had woken up, seen a stranger cooking his descendant's guardian spirit in a pot, and frozen the entire room, still protecting them. After everything, after the pigsty and the sacrifices and 100 years of it, that old bastard's first instinct was to shield his own blood. Then he went back to sleep and left them all standing there paralyzed and did not think about what a man with 2 flood dragons might do with a room full of statues. Free experience, all of it. Level 15. Somewhere in the middle of that, my butterfly grew up. The rain butterfly had spent the entire abyss doing small, useful, invisible things, and at level 15, the tier tipped over and she came apart and reformed at 4 meters across, wings like stained glass in a burning building. Giant winged spirit butterfly. The woman in the red sedan chair leaned out to look at her, and then looked at me and smiled with a lot of teeth. Little brother is so handsome, she said. Would you like to spend a beautiful night with big sister? You'd want to have the ability to back that up first. She laughed, and the sound came out of the 4 weasels instead of her mouth, and I decided I would be dealing with her later, and that I was going to enjoy it and be frightened at the same time. I found the boss by carrying her. The tongueless girl had stayed in the square through all of it, standing exactly where she had stepped away from the old man, and when the fighting stopped, I walked over and picked her up and carried her on my arm past the sedan chair and out toward the east end. Nothing touched me the whole way. This way, I told Li Mei, who was walking beside me having a small crisis. She won't dare to hit me. At the pigsty, I put her down, and she spoke. How did you know I was from here too? Your tongue. She waited. A ghost's body is fixed at the moment of death, I said. You cannot cut the tongue out of a ghost. It grows back with the shape. Yours is gone, which means it was taken while you were still alive, which means you were one of them, which means you are not a servant of this place. You're its result. She looked up at me, and her face did something complicated. You're also, I said, the one who told Wang Hai's team to hide in the coffins. Yes. Why? To make fun of them, she said. And there it was. Not a trap. Not a mechanic. A girl who had been in a shed for 100 years watched 5 armed adults walk into her village and told them a stupid lie, and then watched them believe it because it was the only power she had ever had over anybody. Here's the part where I had to choose, and I want to be honest that it was not difficult, which is itself worth something. She wanted the village to live in the pigsties. She wanted the women to sit in the ancestral hall. She wanted to be worshipped by the people who had traded her, and she wanted them to become, in her words, actual pigs. You are all the victims, I said. Every woman in those sheds. The bad people deserve to be punished, and these people are not qualified to be protected by their ancestors. Then help me. I will, but your revenge is badly designed. She stared at me. You've had 100 years, and you've been doing form without substance, I said. You made them into ghosts and put them in a loop. Do they know why? Has one single one of them ever understood who is punishing them and for what? Because if they don't know, then you're not taking revenge. You're just running a farm. So we fixed it. I went back into the square and I told the villagers, with the authority of a man who had recently killed 6 elites in their hall, that the spirit altar at the center of the ancestral hall was clutter, and that its presence was an insult to the yin god, and that if they wanted the tea back, they would carry it out themselves. They carried their own ancestors' altar out of the hall on their shoulders. They put it down in the mud in the square. And a village woman, one who had lived her whole afterlife in that village, walked up to the tablet of the man who founded her family and spat on it and said, "It's all your fault." The altar cracked down the middle. "Go ahead," I said, to nobody in particular, and to the old man in the middle coffin specifically. "Protect garbage. Now you've become garbage yourself." Du Anning wanted something worse for them. She had a whole plan, and it was inventive. "It's already the death penalty," I said. "They have to be cremated anyway. Why not just cremate them directly?" Record. 8 hours, 44 minutes, 21 seconds, breaking the previous best, which was held by Mayor Wang Hai of Shangyu City in the abyss he had personally mapped in his own city. The betting thread on that run has been screenshotted so many times it has its own compression artifacts. 92% of the money said I would die, 1% said clear. The woman in the red sedan chair caught me at the exit. "You miss things," she said. "I know. There is a hidden quest in here. I'll give you 3 hints because I am generous and because I am bored." She held up fingers. "Bring the village chief's coffin so that there are 4 in the hall, not 3. Kill the green-eyed one of my weasels, not the others. And whatever happens, do not let the fire in the copper vat go out. Why are you telling me this? When will you come back? Will you go easy on me?" "No," she said. "Then in 3 days." 3 days later, I went back in and did all 3 things, and the run came out at 5 hours, 21 minutes, 11 seconds, with the hidden quest completed, and the sky said a sentence that had never been said about a summoner. Perfect clear. What a perfect clear does is not personal. That is the part that took me a while to understand. It does not make me stronger. It rewrites the abyss. The Shangyu Ancestral Hall became permanently 20% easier and 20% more rewarding forever for every professional registered in Shangyu City. And it produced gold cards. 48-hour passes, and if you hold one and enter that abyss, a phantom of the person who cleared it fights alongside you. A phantom of me. For rent. I refuse to set the price myself. I want that on the record because it became a thing. The adoptive father, I told Guoping, is the most tragic figure in every story ever written. He does all the work and takes all the blame. You're the resource minister. You be the father. The mayor's office priced them at 499,999 yuan each, which is a number chosen by a committee if I have ever seen one. 335 sold, 167 million yuan. My cut, 83.75 million. 2 months earlier, I had been deciding whether to keep the lights on. Jiangshui City's forum went down that week. Not moderated. Down. They took it offline because every thread on it had become the same thread. Chen Guang's faction rejected his Abyss application for the quarter. Zhi Gang stopped returning his calls and started building a bridge to somebody else. And Wang Lei, my old teacher, who had walked out of a building with a cardboard box, got a title at Shangyu City First High School and a letter with the municipal seal on it, and he called me to ask whether he was allowed to accept it. I told him he had been allowed to accept it before he did the thing that earned it, and that was the whole difference between him and everybody else in that building. The Dark Valley bottom is not a valley. I want to lead with that, because it took me 34 hours to work it out, and I would like you to have it early. It is a roleplay abyss, which means the system hands you a character and a chain of command. Mine was a soldier. My commanding officer was a man called Captain Mitch, and the situation was that our unit was sealed into a canyon by a swarm of insects that were getting measurably stronger every hour. Mitch had a plan. Mitch's plan was southeast. Mitch had been running southeast for 6 hours when I checked the insect star ratings and understood what the canyon actually was. Every 100 kills, the swarm promotes. 1 star, 2 stars, 3. They were not attacking us to eat us. They were farming each other, and we were the tiebreaker. I went and found Mitch, and I explained this to him, and Mitch told me to hold the line at the southeast wall, so I want to be very clear about what happened next, because people always want me to soften it. Captain, I said. What I need right now is a team without a captain. Sorry, could you please die for a moment? And then I killed him. There was a man in that unit called Arthur, who had a useless ability. That is not my judgment, that is what his own file said. Arthur could change the color of things, not illusion, not camouflage. He could make a thing be a different color, permanently, and the army had put him in a supply role and forgotten about him. Here is what nobody in that canyon had bothered to test. The star markings on the insects are not decoration, they are the actual mechanism. The rank is written on the carapace, and the rank is read by the domain. Arthur painted over a 3 stars markings. The domain read a 0 star. The rest of the swarm ate it in about 11 seconds. I have thought about Arthur a lot. There is a man who spent his whole career being told his talent was a party trick, and he was one curious question away from being the most dangerous soldier in that canyon, and nobody ever asked him the question. I asked him the question. The Beetle Lord had 700,000 health, and I killed it with paint. The drone Bee Lord was worse, because it had a Bee Queen, and the Bee Queen one-shot both of my twin magic fire flood dragons in the opening exchange, which put them on a 24-hour resurrection timer, and left me with a Goblin regiment and a support butterfly against a hive. That fight took 11 hours. I am not going to pretend it was clever. It was 52 goblins dying in shifts while a butterfly kept the survivors standing, and me on a ledge doing arithmetic, and by the end of it, I understood the abyss completely. It is not a valley, it is a pot. The broodmother of this world built a container, put every insect species she had into it, and sealed it, and she will open it when exactly one thing is left alive. It is a domain for producing a single perfect insect by attrition, and my unit had been dropped into it as seasoning. I did not kill the broodmother. I want to be honest, I could not have. What I did was survive her process long enough that the process paid me. Broodmother Energy Bloodstone, 30,000 health, and every future point of health growth I ever get is doubled. Unique. There is one. Vice Captain Maslow and the 11 men still with him did not come out. The domain resets when the population drops below threshold, and it reset on them, and they went back to hour 0 with the memory intact. I knew that would happen about 4 hours before it did. Record. 34 hours, 50 minutes, 14 seconds. Nobody else has ever posted a time on that abyss, because nobody else has ever come out. The Apostle Isolated Island is where I stopped fighting monsters and started fighting people, and I want to explain the difference, because it changed how I think. 4-star abysses match you against professionals from other spaces, other worlds. The system pulls them in and puts them on the same island and does not explain, and the only thing you know about the man walking towards you is that his world has done to him roughly what yours has done to you. The island is a corpse, an actual dead god, lying in the sea, with its ribs coming up out of the water like a harbor. And on it there are apostle marks, and a mark doubles your stats, and if you take one solo without splitting it, you get an extra 30% on top. I went in alone. Sima Ruoji, who is the vice leader of the Yanyan Alliance and who had been assigned to talk me out of it, listened to my reasoning and then said, if you want to challenge the limit of death, then let it be so, and signed the form. Team 1 found me at the second rib, 5 of them, and the captain wore a mask, and the mask is why he had lived long enough to be a captain. SS rank blood key warrior. The mask granted him immunity to crowd control and let him take half the health of whatever he hit and put it in himself. He opened with everything. His alpha strike came out at just under 70,000 damage in one motion, which is enough to delete a professional of my level twice over. It went into a magic shield and 3 training dummies. I had the dummies from a rune called Focus on Companionship, which I had drawn at level 5 and privately considered the most boring thing I owned. He stood there looking at 4 seconds of his best work sitting in a pile of straw. That's it, he said. You're so weak you cannot even one-shot a summoner? Then he realized he had said it out loud, and that I had heard him say it, and I watched a masked man become embarrassed, which is not easy to do. All 5 of them died on that rib. The loot chests gave me 9,900 talent points, a fistful of emblems, a wrench with no explanation, and an emblem duplicator, which is exactly what it sounds like, and which is worth more than the rest combined. Then Shui Gang arrived, and Shui Gang is the reason I remember that island. SS rank hidden class, Undertaker, body type, Behemoth. The mechanic is this. His teammates can give him their lives, not their strength, their lives. They kill themselves, deliberately, and he inherits their health and their attack, and he grows. He came at me at 2.5 meters. By the time the War Tauren reached him, he was 4. By the middle of the fight, he was 5 meters tall, and his own men were still walking up to him one at a time to make him bigger. The War Tauren is my tier 6, primeval bloodline, 60,000 health, 6,000 attack, and he is the only summon I own who genuinely enjoys his work. He fought Shui Gang to a standstill twice, and the second time he lost ground, so I dropped Galio on him. Galio comes from the Crimson Moon Bond, and what he does is fall out of the sky. That is the skill. He is somewhere else, and then he is here, and the ground is not. 12 Death Knights blinked in during the impact frame and detonated together. And then the Atoner and his phantom clone, one real and one made by my staff, took his head from two directions at once. Shui Gang did not fall. He pressed his own neck closed with one hand, and he turned, and he put his last strike into the War Tauren, and it landed, and the Tauren went down on one knee. I, Shui Gang, he said, have failed my brothers. Then he looked at the Atoner, at the black flame in the sockets and the scythe, and something in his face closed. Not to a Reaper, he said, and he did not die of the wound. He refused it. He held himself together, standing, until the timer on his own body ran out, so that the last thing that killed him was time and not my summon. I have beaten better fighters. I have never beaten anybody harder. He dropped a Radiant Grade Coffin Tomb necklace, which I have worn every day since, and which I did not put on for a week. 13 professionals in under 3 hours, and then I found the shop. Slaughter points. You get them for killing professionals from other worlds, and there is a store, and the store does not take money. 13 points bought me 3 million experience, a Radiant equipment box, 2 top-tier skill books, and a core stone. Level 23 to 27 in one purchase. Record, 2 hours 57 minutes 25 seconds. The previous best on Apostle Isolated Island was 2 days, held by a mayor named Guo Sheng, and it had stood for 6 years. Shi Chong came to see me afterward. He is the leader of the Yanyun Alliance. He is a middle-aged man with a permanent mild smile, and he told me the truth in a coffee shop like he was giving me directions. The abyss is not a trial, it is a harvest. Gods use it to strip dimensions, and every world that survives long enough to get good at it becomes worth stripping. And Kyushu has a plan for that, a long one, in 10-year blocks, and the plan does not have a line item for ordinary S ranks. Which is exactly why my subsidy had been so easy to steal. Nobody upstairs had budgeted for me to matter. Chen Guang will apologize now, Xie Chong said. If you want it, I can arrange it inside a week. I thought about it properly, because I owed myself that. Whether he apologizes is a question about his character, I said. Whether I forgive him is a question about mine. Unfortunately, my character isn't that great. He laughed and put the whole alliance behind me that afternoon. By the end of the month, I was number 1 on both newcomer boards, level, and equipment, and the 2 names underneath mine were Zi Ruo, the alliance leader's own daughter, and Gu Minghan, whose father is the sword god. And somewhere in the Li family, quietly, there was a triple S talent that nobody would put a name to. At level 25, the class deepens, and I want to go through what I got, because this is where the summoner stops being a joke with good numbers and starts being a machine. Energy levels, star ranks, talent reversal, and 3 group skills, mass dispel, mass recovery, and group attack, which lets me mark one enemy and make every summon I own hate it specifically. Then the light-winged elf, my first tier 7. Wings of Light stacks 1% damage per hit with no cap. Radiance detonates every stack at once for 5,000 true damage. She is also the reason my class is despised, in a roundabout way. The strongest summoner in recorded history was a man called Kale, and Kale built his entire career on a light-winged elf, and Kale died in the level 50 Awakening Abyss with the best summon anyone had ever seen standing next to him. After that, every guidance counselor in the world had a story to tell about what happens to summoners. The Spirit Butterfly hit tier 6 and became the Spirit Butterfly Queen and gained the single most important skill in my arsenal, which is that she can wrap a dead summon in a cocoon and bring it back. Runes 11 and 12, early education, 1 permanent attack per kill, forever, no cap. And Hedge Fund, which gave me 8,000 talent points immediately and then pays 100 interest per 1,000 stored, capped at 5,000 and Abyss. I had a bank. My class had a bank. The prison death cell asks you one question at the door and everybody gets it wrong. Prisoner or manager. Prisoner means you can break the rules, but you cannot leave your cell. Manager means you walk anywhere you like and you obey the warden, absolutely. 15 of the professionals who went in that night picked prisoner. All 15. Because freedom to break rules sounds like the trap-free option, and because nobody wants to take orders. I picked manager. Why? The warden asked me when they brought me up. I simply don't like being stuck in a jail cell. He gave me a mop. So I mopped. 21 cells in the first day, and here is how. Because it is my favorite exploit I have ever found, and it is completely legal. I would knock. I would say, hello cleaning service. I would wait a beat. Then I would say, since nobody is answering, I'll assume nobody's home. I'm coming in now. Then I would step inside and lock the door behind me. From the inside, with me in it. Because the warden's rules say a manager may not harm a prisoner, and the punishment for breaking that rule falls on the one who did the harming, and I never once laid a hand on anybody. My summons did. The rule had been written for 100 years of managers who were their own weapon. It had never once been read by a summoner. The punishment landed on a goblin, and goblins are replaceable, and I stood in the corner with a mop and an expression of professional regret. 21 cells. There was a man named Zhao Lei in cell 9, SS rank hidden class, from what he called an old world. On his third attempt at this abyss, he decided I was interesting and became my source, and about halfway through the week, he told me the thing that changed my entire understanding of what we are all doing. I had assumed that if a world wins against a god's descent, it is finished. Free. No, Zhao Lei said. Every world that wins gets a new rule added. That's the reward, a harder rule set. For how long? That's the joke, he said. This is a game that simply never ends. I sat with that for a while. Thank you, I said eventually, and I meant it. That's genuinely useful. It lets me completely abandon everything I was planning. Because up until that sentence I had been playing to get out, and you cannot get out. So the only remaining question is what you build on the way through and who you bring, and that is a completely different game with completely different moves. My talent stopped being mine that night. It belongs to whoever ends up standing behind it. The Warden's rulebook contradicts itself, and I found it on day 2 while I was mopping. Rule 1. Obey your superior absolutely. Rule 4. In this place, strength is supreme. Those cannot both be true, and 100 years of managers had never pushed on it, because pushing on it means standing in front of the warden and making him say out loud which one wins. So I did that. Sir, I said in front of the whole manager floor, if a manager is stronger than his superior, which rule applies? He should have said obedience. He is the warden. It costs him nothing. But there were 11 managers watching, and the entire structure of that prison runs on everyone believing that rank is downstream of power, and if he had said obedience out loud, he would have admitted that his own seat was a job title instead of a fact. Strength, he said. Thank you. Then I nominated a challenger for the patrol captain's rank. Not myself. That was the trick. I nominated the Hell Executioner. Because I am a manager and I obey absolutely, and there is no rule anywhere in that book about who my summon obeys, and the warden had to stand there and watch a green-black thing with a scythe walk into a dual circle wearing my authority like a borrowed coat. The warden ruled it a violation and applied the execution penalty. The penalty landed on the summon. The summon survived it. I'm not targeting you, I told him afterward, which is a thing I say when I am absolutely targeting somebody. I'm targeting everything here. The atmosphere is too stagnant. It's time for some new blood. The succubus was rank 9, a floor master, and she came to charm me on day 4. It did not work, for 2 reasons. The first is that my gear was forged to 21% control resistance because I am a paranoid person. The second is that I own a light-winged elf, and once you have looked at a tier 7 elf every morning for a month, a demon who is trying very hard stops being an event. She took it well. She took it so well that she sat down and told me the actual situation, which is the only reason I got out of that prison alive. The prisoners are not prisoners. They are cargo. And the warden is not the warden. He is a prisoner of the god of the prison realm, serving a sentence, running the same 8 days over and over, failing the same delivery for decades, and aging the entire time. Not looping and resetting, looping and aging. That is what got me. He has been in there so long he cannot remember which of the 8 days is real, and his body has kept score the whole way. Iron Tower was rank 4, and he was the warden's own executioner, and he was the fight that nearly ended me. Before it, I upgraded the Hell Executioner to tier 7, and he became the Atoner, and the transformation came with a line I did not write and cannot forget. With only an enforcer and no scythe, the law cannot become an iron rule. But who will atone for hell? Could it be this scythe of mine? Then he took his own face off, reached up, got his fingers under the edge, and pulled, and underneath there was nothing but 2 sockets with black fire in them. The duel was sanctioned, which meant rules, which meant the warden could stop it whenever he liked. So I let Iron Tower put his steel fork through my chest. I want to be clear that this was on purpose and that it was still the worst decision I have ever enjoyed making. He came in expecting a summoner to hide, and I walked into the strike, and it went through me, and I went down and stopped moving. A sanctioned duel ends when a participant dies. A revenge fight does not have rules. The Atoner came off the wall with a phantom clone from my staff, 1 from each side, and took Iron Tower's head about a beat and a half after the warden shouted stop. And then the Atoner died. Master-servant symbiosis. He took the death that was queued for me and stood there and let it land. I got up with the fork still in my chest in front of the entire prison and said the only thing that would keep them all standing still. A life for a life. I don't think anybody loses out. I took Iron Tower's seat at rank 4. The warden pulled me into a bubble of poison mist that night to make me an offer, and the offer was almost sincere. help him complete the trading day inside 7 days, and he would introduce me to the god of the prison realm as his replacement. He also told me, without any particular emotion, that he had read my entire plan. Provoke the rules. Stir up the kobold, the crocodile, and the succubus. Coup. You know I can't stop it, he said. An open conspiracy cannot be stopped, only outlasted. Then I'll tell you something free, I said at the door. I think I know why your aging has been accelerating recently. He went very still. I'll tell you when you're about to leave. The soul bead con is the thing I am proudest of in that whole abyss, and it cost me nothing. A soul bead is a common item. Gray. Worth about as much as a shoelace. I took one and dyed it red. Then I used the dark blood eye, which is a surveillance creature, and the spider woman, who is a gossip in the load-bearing sense, and between them they put one red bead in every single cell in the prison, along with a rumor. The rumor was that the warden had spent decades perfecting a detector for foreign infiltrators, and that it had finally been deployed. There was no detector, there was a shoelace with food coloring on it. But 15 prisoners spent the next 3 days watching each other's beads, and by day 2, they had started accusing each other, and by day 3, the prisoner camp had identified its own professionals and torn itself in half, and the fake became true the way fakes do. My fee for carrying the entire manager camp through the trading day was every slaughter point they earned. All of them. Li Yan, the short-haired captain, agreed in 4 seconds. The fat captain took 6. Then the trading day arrived, and the succubus went and got the cell numbers out of a captured professional from the camp that had been running the prison economy. She got them in about 4 minutes by sitting down across from him and explaining in detail what his own captain was going to trade him for on the 8th day. Then she offered him better terms than the ones he was already on. He took the deal and thanked her for it. She is extremely good at her job, and her job has never once required anything uglier than arithmetic. I farmed cells B2 and B3, which the warden had been using as a disposal chute for everything that came out of his process wrong, and the defective goods of 100 years turned out to be worth about 11 levels. Then I put every point I had into the Atoner. Tier 8, Lord of Sin and Punishment. He got a throne made out of black mist, and the black mist stopped being an effect. It became a place, an actual hell, portable, that I can put around things. Then I killed the Blood Mage Captain, SS rank hidden class, and that was the first SS I had ever taken with nobody helping. And on the last night, with the manager camp winning and 8 of us left standing for the final gamble, I went and found the warden, and I paid him what I owed him. You asked why you were aging faster. He was sitting on the steps. He looked about 90. Because you started counting, I said. Somewhere in the last few years, you stopped treating each cycle as the same day and started treating them as separate days. And the moment you did that, you started serving time instead of standing still in it. You didn't get older because the sentence changed. You got older because you finally admitted it was a sentence. He did not say anything for a long moment. You have already lost, he said. It is the line he says. It is the line he has said to everyone, for decades, at the start of the 8th day. He said it very quietly this time, and he was not talking to me, so I took out the red bridal veil. I have been carrying it since the Shangyu Ancestral Hall. I took it off a hook in a shed in the pigsty, and I have never once explained why to anybody, and every person who has ever seen it in my inventory has assumed it was a trophy. I shook it out. Swona. Down the corridor, badly played and extremely cheerful, in a prison 100 years underground and one entire world away from the mountain village where I found it. The red sedan chair came around the corner with 4 weasels under it, and the woman in red stepped out into a place that should not have had a door for her and looked at the warden, and then looked at me with an expression of genuine delight. Behind her came the dark blood eye, and the kobold, and the crocodile, and the succubus, and the masked butcher, every single one of whom had been the warden's for 100 years and was now, as of that morning, mine. He looked at all of it. The whole architecture of his sentence, standing in his own corridor, facing the wrong way. Oh, he said. And then, and this is the part I did not expect and could not have planned for. I'm really tired. He put his fork down on the stones. Thank you. Perfect clear. 10 days, 7 hours, 12 minutes. The first clear in the history of that abyss by a manager camp, and the first clear by anybody at all. I became the new warden, not as a title. The prison death cell is mine, the building, the space, the cells, all of it, and I can put it down anywhere I like. The loot was the warden's shadow robe, and a radiant grade hat called Black Poison Intent, and a legendary staff that the system forged out of the warden's Poison Abyss steel fork while I watched. Pharaoh's Scepter. I still use it. I have had 4 upgrades to weapons since, and I have never taken it off. The youth professional competition happened 3 weeks later, and Song Yang got me a direct entry slot without qualifiers, which caused a national scandal for about 6 hours. Match 1 was a monk called Wang Li, level 35, and the favorite. The war Tauren blinked. That is not a thing Tauren do. He is 10 meters tall and shaped like a landslide, and he had spent 40 seconds looking slow and enormous, and then he crossed the arena in a single frame, using a charge that reads as a blink at that speed, and Wang Li went into the wall. The commentators had to stop and check the footage. Match 2 was Chen Bo, level 47, SS rank, 2-time runner-up, and a genuinely great professional who has never done anything wrong to anybody. I put 6 summons on the field at once and then dropped Galio on his head. It came out a draw. An actual draw. On the clock, with both of us standing. Qianbo came over afterward and shook my hand and said, I could not close it, in the flat voice of a man who has never once failed to close it, and then he went and sat down by himself for a while. I did not win that tournament, I want that on the record too. I came out of it with a draw and a knockout and no trophy. I also came out of it with Song Yang, the god of slaughter, deciding to know my name, with Luo Xin, who they call the human computer, running me as an equation in front of me and telling me the answer, and with Zichang standing up in front of the whole Alliance Council and betting the Yanyan Pavilion on a summoner, publicly, against the advice of half his own board, and with 2 runes, Pandora's Bench, which gives me 9 bench slots and lets me fuse 3 of a kind into something better, and my sword is yours. I went out that afternoon and bought 300 tier 2 skill books, 300. Every shop in the district. The clerks thought I had lost my mind, and one of them called Guo Ping to check whether I was being extorted. 3 of a kind makes 1 better. 3 of those makes 1 better again. I was not buying summons. I was buying lottery tickets in bulk, and I had a machine at home that turns lottery tickets into tier 6 beasts, and nobody in that city had done the arithmetic except me. The path of exile drops 50 professionals into a pilgrimage of tens of thousands of refugees crossing a desert, and it does not tell any of them that we are there. We were not heroes in that abyss. We were extra mouths. The clan gave each of us a place in the column and a ration allocation and a wife, because that is how the column works. And mine was a woman called Zara, who came with a mute boy, and absolutely no interest in being rescued. The first thing she did was renegotiate my water. You get a full share because you are new, she said. You will not be new tomorrow. Tomorrow you get what you carry. Their clan leader was a man called Nox, and Nox's rules were simple. Water by measure. Nobody waits for stragglers, and when somebody falls behind, you do not say they died. You say the god of the desert took his own. 9 days in, a sandstorm came, and the sandstorm was a domain, and inside it was a sentinel called Gareth. Gareth does not fight you. Gareth gets close and then stops existing in a way that removes a 100-meter sphere of desert. I killed him, and I lost most of a column doing it, and I spent the next 2 days thinking about nothing except how badly I wanted a way to simply not be somewhere for 3 seconds. Then the Haven and the desert war god Rio, who is not a boss, a level 30 professional is meant to see. The spirit butterfly queen cocooned the lord of sin and punishment on the sand while Rio was still walking toward us, and what came out of it was tier 9 for about 90 seconds. A temporary king of hell. 90 seconds was enough. And then the abyss told me what it actually was, and I want you to have it the way I got it, which is badly and all at once. The pilgrimage is a loop. It is the Dream Lord's time corridor, and the high priest, a man called Ku Ming, who had been walking near the front of the column blessing children for the entire 9 days, is a prisoner exiled inside time, and he has walked that desert more times than he can hold in his head. Every one of those refugees dies at the end, every time. And then it starts again at the first well. So I ran it. I ran it over 100 times. I am going to be honest about what that was, because people hear it and think of it as grinding. It is not grinding. Grinding is repetition without cost. Every single loop, I watched the same 11,000 people walk into the same sand, and I learned one new thing, and then the world went back to the first well, and none of them knew me again. Zara renegotiated my water 100 times, word for word, the same argument, with the same small satisfied nod when she won it. The map does not survive a reset. Nothing I carried survived a reset, but divine power does, and Zara had a thread of it in her that nobody in that column had ever bothered to notice, including her, and so on. Loop 9, I started writing the map into her. She did not know she was carrying it. On loop 90, she looked at me at the second well and said, "Why do I know what is behind that ridge?" And I said, "Because you have always known." And she accepted that, because she was a practical woman with water to ration. I killed Ku Ming at the Haven on the 100-and-somethingth run, and he thanked me, and I took the Dream Core. Perfect clear. And the reward was not mine. Every professional in Kyushu received 1 full level, not a buff. A level, permanently, that night, all of them, every single registered professional in the country, from the level 9 kids in their first week to the men in the 70s, and every non-professional, every ordinary person in Kyushu who has never seen an abyss and never will, got 10% to all attributes. I found out what that meant about a week later when a woman stopped me in a market to tell me that her father, who is 78 and who has trouble on stairs, had walked to the shop and back on his own. That is the one. Out of all of it, that is the one I keep. Shu Tianming came to see me 2 days after. The war god of Kyushu, triple S talent, level 75, the strongest human being in our world, and he is missing his right arm, and he does not do anything to hide it. He did not congratulate me. You did the dessert 100 times, he said. About that. Why? Because 99 wasn't enough. He looked at me for a while with an expression I could not read at all, and then he said the thing that I have been carrying ever since, and he said it like he was complaining about the weather. I don't need a junior, he said. I've got a country full of juniors. Every one of them wants me to stand in front of them, and I have been standing in front of them for 11 years, and I am going to keep doing it until something takes the other arm. He drank his tea. It was terrible tea. He drinks barley tea on purpose because he says the expensive stuff smells like corruption. What I need is somebody who can stand next to me, he said. That's all. That's the whole speech. I've been looking for 11 years. I did not answer him because I did not have an answer that was not a lie. I founded the guild that month, and the reason was one line in the charter reward. Every summoner who joins may raise one summoned beast's talent rank by 1. That does not sound like much until you know what the tier 7 ceiling has cost. It killed Kyle, and it broke a man called Wang Kong, who spent 30 years researching a class nobody wanted, and then wrote a textbook that opens by begging you not to read it. I went to see him at his factory. I told him what the guild reward was, and I watched a man in his 50s sit down on a crate in his own loading bay. With that, he said, a beginner would never have to use the Goblin. I used the Goblin. Yes, but you are. He stopped. He looked at me properly for the first time. Yes, all right. He sold the factory that week and came on as vice leader, and the first thing he did was open a folder of system designs he had been building for 2 decades with no way to test any of them. Water and lightning, 1 core and 2 half cores. Every school of thought the class had never been allowed to have. 150 members in 3 days, and I made him rewrite page 1. Also that month, Chen Guang resigned as mayor of Jiangshui City, and instead of taking a consultancy or going quietly into some provincial office, he went down into the sewers under the Northwest District and joined the Advent Descent sect. I did not think about it as much as I should have. The Guild Abyss is a territory war, and it has no difficulty tiers, and the deaths are real. It also has slaughter points, and slaughter points are the fastest currency in the world if you are willing to be the reason other people stop existing. I killed an awakened level 51 from the island nation in my first hour. 3.8 million experience and 5 points. Then I found the red name mechanic, which is a marker that grows on you as you kill, and which every professional in that abyss treats as a death sentence because a red name attracts bounty hunters. I farmed it to 50 on purpose. Ruthless killer, the system called me, and the whole region lit up, and hunters started coming, and I want to be clear that I was not being brave. I was fishing. A red name is not a warning, it is a lure, and I had 100 goblins and nothing else to do that week. Then I found a spawning exclusive abyss, and did the thing that got me banned from that region. I baited about 100 professionals into a ruined building, and then the spirit butterfly queen picked the building up with all of them inside it and put it down on top of the exclusive abyss coordinates. If you are going to have a free-for-all, have it somewhere valuable. Chen Guang arrived in the middle of it. He came in with a man called Shen Li, who is burned across most of his face and who giggles, and Shen Li is Advent Descent sect and is genuinely one of the strongest people I have ever fought. Chen Guang was not. He had the ink power of a sacrificial rite called Gui Ying loaned to him, and he had spent it on getting to me, and when he got to me, the Extreme Abyss Swordmaster was standing there instead. Tier 8. 1 move. Extreme Stab, which stacks true damage with no ceiling as long as he keeps hitting the same target. The ink left Chen Guang about 4 seconds in. It did not fail. It withdrew. Deliberately, the way you take your hand off a bad investment. He looked around for it. That is what I remember, not the fight. The moment a man who has spent his entire life being carried by other people's arrangements looked around for the arrangement, and it was gone. Afterward, I had the heavenly fire cremate him because he was going to lie there otherwise. We were acquaintances once, I said, so I'll give you a cremation. In your next life, don't be so stubborn. It's not good for your health. Then the ink sphere came back, and it talked to me. Guiying does not threaten and does not recruit like a normal person. It asked me a question. Use your brain and think carefully. Why do they launch the God War? What are they fighting for? And then before it left. Once you understand that, I believe you will come looking for me on your own initiative. Your level is still too low. You cannot touch the true meaning of this war. I'll wait. I hope you won't be a second Shu Tianming, I said out loud to an empty street. Damn it, another Riddler. But I have thought about that question every day since, and the part that bothers me is not the answer. It is the phrasing. Since when were the things behind the abyss called gods? Who decided that word? Because somebody did. And the somebody who names a thing usually owns it. Shen Li and I fought for 6 hours, and neither of us won. He is a magic assassin, which is a class that should not exist, and he opened by killing a level 40-something professional with a single critical hit 40 meters from where I was standing. So I stopped trying to outdamage him and put the War Tauren in front of him instead. I had taken the Tauren from Tier 7 straight to Tier 9 that morning with 250,000 talent points, and what came out was not what I expected. The King of Hell got enlightenment when he hit Tier 9, the Tauren got rage. He cried blood, actual blood, out of both eyes, and the emotion that came off him in my summoner space was not power, it was refusal. War-scarred, Wilderness King, Divine Ox. He told me why, afterward, in the flat voice he uses. I was once unable to protect the ones I wanted to protect because I was weak, he said. I knelt in front of arrogant gods and watched them kill my tribe. My rage turned the whole wilderness into a river and ended a war that had lasted centuries, and it meant nothing because by the time I was angry enough, those gods had already left. I was a weakling with impotent rage. Then he looked at me. But now I have someone I want to protect again. Let me out. I need a hearty fight to get my confidence back. And I want to tell them that from today, even if gods come for the one I intend to protect, they will have to taste my fury first. Shenli tried everything. He had a move called Death Baptism that he had clearly been saving for somebody important, and it went through the Wilderness King's chest and out the other side, and Shenli stood there smiling and pale and exhausted with his hand on a wall, and then the hole closed. Full health, a few seconds. As if it had never happened. The Wilderness King patted his own chest and said, in a tone of genuine grievance, "So painful, I won't spare you." Shenli looked at me with an expression I will treasure until I die. "Screw you," he said. "I'm not playing anymore." And then he stood up straight and said with enormous dignity, "Good, bye." And a ball of black ink swallowed him and popped like a bubble. The abyss opened 4 hours later, and it was mine. I customized it, on Wong Kong's instructions, into something called the Thundercloud Strait, Water and Lightning, Summoner Class. A place where the entire school of thought he had been designing in the dark for 20 years could actually be built. 9th in the world rankings, on the same board as Xu Tianming's 2. The first exclusive abyss in history belonging to the Summoner class. Wong Kong walked into it and stood in the entrance and did not say anything for a very long time, and I let him have that. They were waiting for me at the exit, not the ones I had beaten, the ones I had not. A mage at level 78 and a warrior at 79, from 2 different worlds, sent specifically because somebody upstairs had run the same arithmetic Xi Chang ran and had reached the same conclusion from the other side of the table. "I wouldn't want your world to produce another Xu Tianming," the mage said, and he was raising his staff before he finished the sentence, which I respected. I had exactly one option, and it was embarrassing, so I took it. "Seriously," I said, to a rooftop where nobody was standing. "How long are you people going to keep watching the show?" A very young professional put his head over the parapet. "We sent the notification ages ago," he said apologetically. "The boss just hasn't come." "The boss? If you don't come out now," I said louder, "I am actually going to die here. I want you to know that." The air behind me split open like somebody had put a knife through a curtain, and the entire sky turned red. Not a light, a name. A red name so saturated it drowned mine. The accumulated marker of a man who had killed in that region for years and been formally sanctioned and banned from ever coming back. Ha ha ha. "Who's calling for help?" Xu Tianming stepped out of the tear with one arm and a grin. "And who's bullying the genius of our Kyushu? Let this war god of Kyushu take a look." The level 78 mage went the color of paper. "Old dog," Xu Tianming said cheerfully to a man 3 times my level. "You fought me before. Every single time, the only reason you walked away was that you acted like a dog. What's changed? You hit 78 and forgot?" He put his left hand on the empty right sleeve. The mage turned around and left without a word. "That's more like it," Xu Tianming called after him. "That's the real you, a dog running off with its tail down." I stood there in the wreckage of a district with 2 Tier 9 summons and a stolen abyss, and I said the only thing I could think of, which was, "When it comes to showing off, you're still the best." "The only hobby I have in this life," he said, "is showing off, especially in front of old rivals." Then he cut a hole in space and told me to hurry up before an administrator noticed he had broken his exile to come and get me, and I went through it. "Inside, with the hole sealed," he explained. He had been sanctioned out of that entire region years ago for exactly what I had spent the week doing, and the price of his sanction had been peace for the juniors coming after him. "So I blocked your fastest road," he said, and he actually looked guilty, which on his face is a strange thing to watch. "Sorry about that. You've been following me the whole time. Luo Xin predicted you'd found a guild and then immediately do something insane in the guild abyss. Song Yang was worried Gui Ying would get to you first." He shrugged with one shoulder. "So I waited for you to ask for help. Given how fast you're growing, I figured there wouldn't be many more chances." "You waited," I said, "so that I would owe you." Given your current growth rate, said the strongest man in the world. Yes, I had to seize the opportunity. I stood there in a pocket of cut space, holding an abyss that belonged to a class that has never owned anything, next to a one-armed man who had thrown away 11 years of careful diplomacy to come and stand in front of a level 43 because nobody had ever come to stand in front of him, and I understood the offer, finally. It was not an invitation to be his successor. It was a man who has held up a sky for 11 years asking whether he could put one hand down. Fine, I said, but when I'm standing next to you, I'm going to be insufferable about it. I would be disappointed, said Xu Tianming, by anything less. That is where I am going to stop, because that is where the first part of this ends. 11 months ago, I was a kid in a relief house holding a card that said Summoner in a city that had already written my obituary in advance and filed it. Now there is a guild with my name on the charter, and an abyss with my name on the deed, and a class that used to be a punchline, has a school of thought and 150 members, and a textbook whose first page has been rewritten. I am level 43. My health is 490 plus everything I have clawed back since. And two things are true that were not true yesterday. A one-armed man has asked me to stand next to him, which means the sky is heavier than anybody has been saying out loud. And somewhere under a city, a thing made of ink is waiting for me to work out why the war is being fought, because it is certain that when I do, I will come looking for it. It is not wrong about that. That is the part that bothers me.